Welcome back, everybody. It is once again the Willadelphia podcast. I am your host, Will Barbera, and there is a whole lot of nothing going on in the world of Philadelphia sports this week. The only thing we really have to talk about today is the Phillies at the All-Star break, and then I'm briefly going to touch on the Philadelphia Eagles at the end of this episode. But let's get into it. We are going to talk about the MLB All-Star break tonight. Today is Sunday. Tonight is the last game for the Phillies before the All-Star break. Happens at 4:10. Game 3 of a 3-game series against the San Diego Padres. Christopher Sanchez versus Nick Pivetta. Definitely going to be watching as long as I get this recorded and edited by that time. I can't remember the last time there were this many notable snubs from the Major League Baseball All-Star game. And it's not just Phillies. We're going to get into a couple Phillies, and we're going to get into what the big story for the Phillies is right now, which is predicated around a couple of those All-Star snubs, but we'll get there. I want to start by saying, Major League Baseball, this is my favorite All-Star game. I like the NBA All-Star game is a joke. NHL All-Star game is really fun. I do love it, especially with the World's Tournament that they introduced this year. I think that's only going to make it more fun and more of a spectacle. But the Pro Bowl's a joke. NBA All-Star Game's a joke. MLB All-Star Game actually means something. And the way the MLB is handling it is turning it into another joke. It is the only All-Star Game that means anything. It determines whether or not the American League or the National League hosts the World Series. Whether you get home field advantage in the World Series is a big deal, especially for a lot of these players that play on teams that are either fighting for a playoff spot or are basically guaranteed to be playing in October, basically. So it means something, and it means something to baseball fans because we see how ridiculous the other big sports are making their own versions of this game, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch what I think has been the best All-Star game in sports kind of turn into what it is now, which is more of the same compared to the NBA and the NFL, where it's just a spectacle where the best players don't actually even play. A couple of notable All-Star snubs that aren't Phillies. First one is a New York Met, Juan Soto of the New York Mets. I hate the New York Mets. Legitimately. Can't stand them. They are my least favorite Major League Baseball team. Them and the Atlanta Braves are like 1A and 1B. I hate them on the same level that I hate the Dallas Cowboys. I'm still going to give credit where credit is due. Juan Soto is quite literally the definition of an all-star. I understand that he may not have the best numbers in the world, but compared to some of the other guys you put on the roster, he's got readily qualified numbers. I don't understand he's hitting 264, 22 home runs and 54 RBIs. He hit a homer last night. You put Lindor in the game, which we'll get to in a little bit, but he's hitting 263 with 19 home runs. 54 RBIs and 17 stolen bases. If he's good enough to start at shortstop in the National League All-Star game, Juan Soto's good enough to start in the outfield. I don't care that he's a New York Met. Juan Soto is one of the best hitters in baseball. He is an all-star. He's been an all-star. The all-star game is a spectacle. You need to have your best players, your household names, in the All-Star game. If he's capable of playing in the All-Star game and he's hitting over the Mendoza line, get him in the All-Star game. Another person, Seiya Suzuki of the Chicago Cubs. He's their designated hitter. He leads the National League in runs batted in with 77 runs batted in. He's not in the All-Star game. He also is hitting 263 with 25 bombs. 25 home runs, 77 RBIs. You lead the National League in runs batted in. You're not going to play in the Midsummer Classic? Give me a break, man. And then George Springer of the Toronto Blue Jays. This is a guy that was a household name for Houston years ago. And now he's been to Toronto. Toronto's finally, they're playing like a first-place team. They're right up there with New York in the American League East. They're pushing for a playoff spot, and it's because of what this guy's doing. He's hitting 280 with 16 bombs and 53 RBIs. One of their better offensive players. He's not an all-star, but Randy Arozarena is. Randy Arozarena and Julio Rodriguez of the Seattle Mariners were both named all-stars. You know what they're both hitting this year? J-Rod's hitting 249, 13 bombs, 48 RBIs, 16 stolen bases. Randy Arozarena, he's also hitting 249, 16 home runs, so 3 more home runs than Rodriguez, 46 RBIs, so 2 less RBIs than Rodriguez, same amount of stolen bases, they both have 16. You put Julio Rodriguez in the game, he can't play, and you replace him not with a better player, which are fully and readily available. I just showed you George Springer. That's just one outfielder that could have sufficed. You replace him with his teammate who has basically the same exact stat line. Make it make sense. And then the last big, I thought, notable all-star snub was Michael Busch of the Chicago Cubs. He's their first baseman. He is under the radar having a phenomenal year, hitting .292 with 18 bombs and 58 runs batted in. This guy's not in the all-star game. And I'm starting to get a little frustrated with Major League Baseball because there are guys in the game that don't belong in the game. The league announced today that Jacob Misiorowski, the rookie phenom for the Milwaukee Brewers, has been named an all-star. This is a guy who has started 5 major league games. And I understand the kid's a talent. He's fun to watch. I like watching him pitch. He touches like 102, every other pitch. It's crazy. And he's going to be a really talented player for a long time. A guy with 5 starts and a 2.81 earned run average and 33 strikeouts should not be in the all-star game. After 5 starts, I don't care. He could have thrown 5 no-hitters. I'd have been like, that's crazy you're going to put this guy in the all-star game. So all of that being said, the Phillies are pissed off about how many all-star representatives they have. This is a team that's on pace to win 95 games. They're a game back of the New York Mets. They've been literally exchanging, going back and forth with the Mets for first place for the past several months at this point. They have 1 all-star representative, really 2. The only 2 that were voted to the all-star game were Zach Wheeler, who's in National League Cy Young contention, so duh, and Kyle Schwarber, who has 30 home runs at the all-star break. He's been great. Those are the Phillies' only 2 all-star representatives. How could that be when there are guys like Christopher Sanchez on the team, guys like Ranger Suarez, guys like Trey Turner? How could these 3 guys not be in the National League All-Star game? Let's take a look at their numbers, okay? Trey Turner, he's hitting .291 with 11 home runs and 40 RBIs. He's got 24 stolen bases in 30 attempts. He is the National League hit leader. He has more hits than anybody. He's not in the All-Star game. I already brought up Francisco Lindor. He's starting the All-Star game for the National League. He's hitting .263 with 19 home runs and 54 runs batted in, 15 stolen bases in 17 attempts. I understand he's giving you a little bit more power and production, but he's not leading the league in hits, and he's got almost a 30-point difference, negative, by the way, in batting average to Trey Turner. How does that make any sense? And then the other guy is Elly De La Cruz. Elly De La Cruz hitting .280. He's the other shortstop. He's the reserve shortstop for the National League. I get that, man. He's one of the spectacles of the sport. You could argue that he's right up there with Juan Soto right now as terms of like players that everybody wants to watch, that are the most fun to watch. But it's hard to say that he doesn't have a better batting average. I understand he has more power and production numbers, but he doesn't have more stolen bases and he doesn't have more hits. So it's hard to make the argument that Trey Turner shouldn't have at least been a reserve on the National League All-Stars. Christopher Sanchez is 7-2 with a .259 earned run average and 116 strikeouts in 18 starts. He quite literally has all better numbers. You name it. Strikeouts, WAR, wins, losses, walks and hits per innings pitched or whip, ERA plus, less walks than David Peterson of the New York Mets, who was just named a reserve. David Peterson this year, 6-4 with a 3.06 earned run average and 93 strikeouts, same amount of starts. He's an all-star reserve. Christopher Sanchez isn't. Then we get to Ranger Suarez. Now, Ranger Suarez missed a month with an injury. I understand that fully. He's still 7-3 with a 1.94 earned run average and 78 strikeouts and 13 starts. He missed 5 starts at the beginning of the year. Out of every single pitcher in Major League Baseball that has thrown at least 80 innings, I know that's not the actual threshold for the ERA. He hasn't quite gotten there yet, but every single other person that has thrown 80 innings, Ranger Suarez has the lowest ERA at a 1.94. He will eventually, if he makes like 2 or 3 more starts at this pace with his ERA, he will be the National League earned run average leader. And then people are going to go, whoa, who's this guy that's ahead of Paul Skeens and didn't make the All-Star game? Great question. It's been head scratching to me that these two guys wouldn't make the team, but they're going to put Misiorowski, a rookie with 5 starts, and David Peterson, a reserve on the Mets, who quite literally has all worse numbers than both of these guys. It doesn't make any sense to me. What is this game becoming? What is the Midsummer Classic becoming that the best players, whether on the Phillies or not on the Phillies, aren't playing in the game? Yeah, I'm still going to watch the All-Star game. 100%. And like I said, this is nothing against Misiorowski, but or Peterson. Well, I don't like David Peterson. He's a Met, and he's not as good as everyone makes him out to be either. But no disrespect to him as a person or a player. These numbers are good enough to be considered for sure, but to be squarely an all-star reserve over these guys. So, and then Major League Baseball releases this statement, right? They say that we reached out to both Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez and said, would you like to be an all-star? Then they gave them a caveat, and this I had never heard before in my entire life. Since when are you allowed to be named an all-star only if you can pitch in the all-star game? Since when was that? I don't remember reading that in the rules anywhere. That makes no sense to me. How in the world can you reach out to Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez and say, hey, we think that both of you are good enough to be in the all-star game? Does it work with your pitching schedules? And for both of them to come back and say, no, it doesn't. Rangers started game 1 of this Padres series and Sanchez starts today. If either one of them are going to give you an inning in the game, that it's going to offset their rest. The Phillies don't like that, and neither do Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez. Ergo, I can't pitch in the all-star game. Why does that mean that you can't be an all-star? If we're giving guys who don't even deserve to be in the game but can play, the only caveat for being an all-star is that you can play, really. That's insane to me, and that's news to me as well. And it's pretty ridiculous to say, oh, well, it's not our fault. We reached out to them, but they can't play, so they can't be selected for the all-star game. Zach Wheeler was selected for the all-star game. He pitched yesterday against San Diego. He said, hey, I'm scheduled to be the first or second start when we come back for the all-star break, and I just pitched 2 days before the all-star break happens. I can't pitch in the all-star game. He still gets credit for being an all-star. Why don't Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez get the same treatment? And again, I'm sure I'm sound like a broken record at some point where I talk about how just everybody hates the Philadelphia sports, but outside of Philadelphia, there is a legitimate prejudice. And again, my war cry, Philadelphia's war cry, whatever you want to call it, is no one likes us and we don't care. Because it's the most fitting thing that a Philadelphia fan can say. No one likes us and we don't care. You know what will happen? You guys have your all-stars. Let Misiorowski and Peterson play. Ranger and Sanchez are just going to keep doing their thing, man. And I love the chip that these guys have on their shoulder. They don't even care that they're not all-stars, even though they're willing, like 1,000% more deserving of it than these guys. And I also love that the team is starting to back them up. I love that the team is coming to their defense. Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, and Nick Castellanos all told The Athletic that they think it's total and utter BS that these guys aren't in the All-Star game. Trey Turner was snubbed himself. He had this to say. Trey Turner was snubbed, and he said, what a joke. That's effing terrible. I mean, that's terrible, dude, when the Athletic reporter asked him about Sanchez and Suarez not making the game. This is a guy who leads the National League in hits and isn't an all-star. And he's saying how effing terrible it is that Sanchez and Ranger aren't in the game. That's a damn good teammate, in my opinion. Casty added, it's turning into the Savannah Bananas, which I love. Casty has this great way of putting his own Philadelphia spin on what the narrative is, and I think Philadelphia always resonates with it, and I love it. I love it. I think he's just the best personality-wise. I have some quarrels with his inconsistencies at the dish, believe me, but I'll always be a fan of Casty, if for nothing else, but for his commentary on certain media narratives. But he's right. It is turning into the Savannah Bananas, where people that don't deserve to play are now part of one of the biggest spectacles in the game. And then JT Realmuto added, quote, that's just how Major League Baseball does it now. Nothing against the Misiorowski kid, but those two, Suarez and Sanchez, are deserving of being on the team in the first place. There's no doubt about it. So, I love the fact that these teammates are coming to the defense of their teammates and going, hey, man, What's going on here? These guys are two of the best pitchers in baseball, especially two of the best left-handed pitchers, even in the National League baseball, whatever you want to call it. And they're not in the game, but we got a rookie kid with 5 starts and another lefty on the Mets who's got an above 3 ERA, who doesn't have any better numbers than either of these two guys. But they can't pitch an inning, so they can't be named an all-star. Cut me a break, man. Ridiculous. At the same time, we will see what happens. I think that this is only going to fuel the Phillies more as we get closer to the trade deadline. And that's my next topic, because Jeff Passan came out recently, this past week, and said the Philadelphia Phillies have had talks with both the Minnesota Twins and the Cleveland Guardians. And basically the talks were surrounding 2 players on each team. And by each team, I mean the Guardians and Twins. I don't know what the Twins and Guardians were talking to the Phillies about as far as a return goes for these players, but apparently the Phillies were talking to the Twins about Johan Duran, the Twins closer, who I've talked about several times on this podcast, and Byron Buxton, their center fielder, who's also an all-star. Actually just hit for the cycle 2 days ago, went 5 for 5, hit for the cycle. And then on the Guardians, they were talking about left fielder Stephen Kwan and closing pitcher Emmanuel Clase. Now, if you have listened to even a lick to this podcast, you know that my dream that I literally can't come up with, I think the dream that Martin Luther King was talking about is the Phillies trading for one of these 2 relievers, whether it be Duran or Clase. Give me one of them. I don't care. If you trade for both of them, I'll prance up and down the street naked. But literally, if you trade for one of them, Willie B's happy. And that's putting it lightly. And then on top of it, again, if you've listened to this podcast at all whatsoever, you've heard me say that the Phillies' 2 biggest needs right now in mid-July are solid bullpen help and an outfield bat. I would particularly love a right-handed outfield bat, but I don't really know what, I'll take what I get at this point, okay? And if you're going to give me Stephen Kwan, who was a batting title contender last year, plays great defense, is a good table setter, I'll take that. That's an upgrade from Kepler or Marsh or Rojas or anybody else you're going to try out there in left field. So I'm totally for that, 100%. Buxton is one that, if the Phillies trade with the Twins and they get Durant and Buxton, the Phillies should immediately become a top 3 odds-on favorite to win the World Series. Everybody is fully aware that those are the 2 biggest needs. You need a solid closer to fix the back end of the bullpen, and you need an outfield particularly an outfielded right-handed bat that can play either center or left field. Byron Buxton and Johan Duran check both of those boxes pretty clearly. So I think that would be a huge move for the Phillies. Either one of those would be huge. And we'll see if it comes to fruition at all closer to the deadline. But man, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better trade if you're the Phillies in either of those, truth be told. Like I said, I'd prefer to trade with the Twins, but I think Buxton's an upgrade over Kwan, and I think Clase is probably a little bit of an upgrade over Duran. So it's really just a pick 'em, in my opinion. Take your pick. But if you're asking me, I'd probably rather the Minnesota trade. So anyway, stay tuned. Obviously, we're going to be talking a whole lot of Phillies baseball as we get into the dog days of summer. So don't you worry about that. We will absolutely keep you posted about what happens closer to the trade deadline. And I want to finish the show today by talking about the Philadelphia Eagles a little bit, because I keep seeing these things online talking about how the Eagles should be on alert for the Washington Commanders and Dallas Cowboys in the division this year. Ray Didinger said something the other day that I think really puts into perspective where the Eagles are going into this season. The Philadelphia Eagles have been around since 1933. And this is the first time going into the 2025-26 NFL season that they were coming off of a championship and they were clearly the team to beat. And it is annoying to me that teams out there who just don't like the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles play in Philadelphia and have fans of Philadelphia cheering them on are trying to build this narrative that the Eagles aren't as good as we seem to think that they are. That is complete and utter bull, you know what, okay? I don't care 1 second about the additions that the Commanders and the Cowboys have made this offseason. Like that means a goddamn thing compared to what the Philadelphia Eagles have retained as far as talent goes on this roster. I don't care that we lost Josh Sweat and Milton Williams and CJ Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay. We still have Vic Fangio. We still have Howie Roseman. We still have a super young core. And what have the Commanders and Cowboys done? Let's take a look at what they did this offseason that made them true contenders against the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. Because I think it's ridiculous to even that these narratives are even being spun. The Washington Commanders, they traded for left tackle Laramie Tunsil from the Houston Texans. Laramie Tunsil is a good left tackle. He's 30 years old, and he led all tackles in football in penalties last year. Why do you think Houston was so happy to unload his contract? You know why? Because of those two reasons. He's about to be on the wrong side of 30, and he led all the league in tackles last year, and he cost a pretty penny. And that's why people were scratching their heads so much. Why would Houston trade their best offensive lineman? Why would a team that needs offensive line help more than anything trade away their best offensive lineman to a contender in the NFC? Because they don't think he has that. They don't think his constant rate of play at the age that he is good enough to foot the bill. That's why. And the Washington Commanders said, "Hey, bring him right here. Bring him right here. Give him to us. We'll give you whatever you want." You know why they did that? Because they don't think. They don't know. The Houston Texans were right to get rid of Laramie Tunsil. And is that saying that he's going to be a bad left tackle? No. But is that really all you needed? And then they go, no. Well, they traded for Deebo Samuel too. Okay. Almost the exact same situation. Deebo Samuel's 29. He cost $17 million a year. You know how many receiving yards he had a year ago? He had 670 receiving yards. The one good year that Deebo Samuel has had in his career, a couple of years ago, 2022, was because he was quite literally one of the best wide receivers in NFL history at yards after the catch. In 2023, he ranked in the bottom 15. He ranked 13th. In 2023, he ranked 13th in yards after the catch. Didn't have over 1,000 receiving yards. Last year, he ranked 15th in yards after the catch. Not to mention, we're not even going to talk about the character issues. We're not going to talk about the weight issues, which is insane to me. The Commanders fans are like, he doesn't have a weight problem. Do you really think San Francisco just offloaded a receiver in the middle of his prime for what? Because of his contract? No. It's all of these things. It's character. It's the fact that he probably doesn't think that he needs to be in as good a shape as he actually needs to be in. Otherwise, he wouldn't have all these weight problems surrounding him. Guy's got Eddie Lacy syndrome. It's ridiculous. And then on top of it, he had 6 drops. The one thing that has made him elite in his career, which is getting yards after the catch, has been slowly declining for each of the past 2 seasons to the point where he is no longer even a viable number 2 receiver. But the Commanders pick up his contract from San Francisco, and all of a sudden that makes them a contender because they traded for 2 over-the-hill expensive pieces to add to their offense. I think that's a ridiculous sentiment. I do. And then they lose Jonathan Allen, their best playmaker on their defensive line, Jonathan Allen, to Minnesota, and they signed Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw was one half-decent season, which is what he had last year, a half-decent season, away from being cut and not signed anywhere but a practice squad after his rookie contract finished. Last year for San Francisco was his career year. He had 25 tackles and 4.5 sacks. He has 9.5 sacks in his 4-year career. For a first-round pick, that's abysmal. And for Washington to go and sign him and say he's going to replace the best interior defensive lineman that we've had since I've been alive is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to say that somehow makes your defense better. Doesn't make any sense to me. They lost Jeremy Chin in free agency. They re-signed Bobby Wagner. And I understand Bobby Wagner's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I just don't know that he's going to be the same player at age 35. I really don't. And maybe he will be, but they can't just keep addressing the position with him for as long as that's not going to keep working as well as it has for long. So the Commanders, and then on top of it, Jaden Daniels How many times have we seen a quarterback come in and give a stellar rookie performance and then regress? We just saw it with CJ Stroud of the Houston Texans. He came in, everybody, oh, this is a top 5 quarterback. Top 5. Easy. Easy going into next season. If you call CJ Stroud a top 10 quarterback after his sophomore season, you didn't watch any film. Okay? You didn't watch a goddamn thing. So I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that the Commanders are really going to threaten the Eagles. Yeah, they might compete. And if the Eagles underperform, yeah, they could slide in there. But that they're a threat to a fully healthy Eagles team on the same level of last year, get out of here, man. And then the Dallas Cowboys is just funny. It really is. It's hilarious to think that the Cowboys are a contender because they get Dak back healthy. I mean, like, this is a guy who last time he played healthy led the league in interceptions. But you draft Tyler Booker. I like Tyler Booker. I think that was a good draft choice for you guys because you need to revamp your offensive line. And I think he's a good player. Taking an Alabama offensive lineman in the first round, that's not a Cowboys pick, but it's a pick that they needed to make. And I'll give him credit for that. What I won't give him credit for is losing all these pieces on defense and then just covering up for it by trading for George Pickens. And all you Cowboys fans, yippee, they did it. We're going to be in the Super Bowl again. It's actually insane. After a while, I really didn't know if you guys were still that delusional, but here you are. Here you are, ramping yourself up. We got Dak, we got CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. Who's going to run the football, by the way? You got rid of Rico Dowdle. He had 1,079 yards last year. Who'd you replace him with? Oh, that's right. Javonte Williams, who had 513 yards, and Miles Sanders, who had 205 yards on the Carolina Panthers a year ago. They had 718 rushing yards combined, good for well over 300 less than what Dowdle had. That's who you're replacing with this? But you drafted Tyler Booker. So now your offensive line's comparable to like Detroit and Philadelphia. Like, it's pure delusion. I don't understand it. I really don't understand how they can constantly talk themselves into this is the year every single year. It's mind-boggling to me. You lost Jordan Lewis, one of your better cornerbacks. You lost DeMarcus Lawrence, probably your best edge rusher, not named Micah Parsons. And you lost Cooper Rush, your backup quarterback. And you lost Rico Dowdle. You quite literally downgraded at all of those positions. The only position you upgraded at was wide receiver 2. Not even wide receiver 1 and not even wide receiver as a whole. Your wide receiver group didn't get better. Your second wide receiver spot got better. And now you're like, oh, I'm ready to go and fight. I'm going 12 rounds with the defending champions. I just like there's no like you people are just dumber than a bowl of oatmeal. Like I don't understand how that's a possibility in your head. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. If Dak comes in and he's MVP and Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders rush for 1,000 yards each and Pickens and Lamb receive the same amount, hey man, that's fine, whatever. But to suggest that the off seasons that these two teams have had put them on the level of the Philadelphia Eagles coming off a Super Bowl championship, retaining just about all of their core going into the next season. And I understand we got a new offensive coordinator in there, but all we lost on the offensive side of the ball was Mekhi Becton. Do you not think Jeff Stoutland's going to be able to roll Tyler Steen or Kenyon Green or any other offensive line prospect and do exactly the same thing we did for Becton that revitalized his career? I don't know. I don't know what else to say to you guys at this point, but it's sad. It's pathetic. And I can't wait until the Philadelphia Eagles just wipe the floor with you guys. And like I said, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'll always admit when I'm wrong. You're never going to hear me double down unless the circumstances change. But man, it's crazy to me that people are really, the Eagles were a super team, so good that they were capable of carrying a bum quarterback in Jalen Hurts to a Super Bowl MVP. That's how good the Eagles were. And then all of a sudden we lose one offensive starter, 2 defensive starters, and a couple backup rotational players, and the sky's falling. Like it's crazy to me. So Eagles fans need to let these other fans know you're not on our level. Come get you some. And we'll see what happens in 2025. That is our show today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Willadelphia podcast. My name is Will Barbera. We'll see you next time. Go Birds. Kabooyah.